If you're watching this, you're probably in the fantasy playoffs, and now it's about giving yourself every edge possible. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 9 running backs that you need to pick up if they're still available, because they're the best possible players you can stash right now. These are guys who are one injury away from league-winning upside, and they already have strong playoff matchups if the lead back does go down. And we're starting with Allgeier, whose role is already baked into the red zone plan for the Atlanta Falcons. He's scored in week 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, and week 13, all while kind of dialing up some looks for him in each and every game, regardless of if Bijan Robinson is healthy or not. So he's a guy that's going to continue to have some standalone value, but if Bijan ever went down, he's instantly going to be a league winner. He's available in 67.2% of leagues. So today we're going to talk about some guys that may not be available in your league, but if they are available in your league, these are the guys that you have to make sure are sitting on your bench just in case, because they could be guys that could make a difference for you down the stretch. So obviously he's got a nose for the end zone. The role is already proven. And even in these like blowout losses, wins, we've really seen him kind of show up with some short yardage and garbage time scores. He's been scoring in a million different ways, which is obviously positive. So the standalone value is definitely great, but massive upside if Bijan does go down. He's kind of the premier example of a huge value if the starter does get hurt. So he's eclipsed 50 rushing yards just once since September, but it's kind of a little bit of like a low floor, zero ceiling flex option right now. But that's the kind of profile that you can stash instead of planning on starting. And this is the type of insurance back that you want to have hiding on your bench in a running back centric environment. And he's still going to get the short yardage stuff regardless. But if he does end up kind of getting a little bit more work down the stretch, or there is an injury, he's basically one of the best playoff contingencies in all of fantasy if Bijan does miss time. Chuba Hubbard. This one's a little bit different, right? So he's only available in 24.2% of leagues. The Panthers have already come out and said that Rico Dowdle would remain the team's primary early down back. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a ton of value. We've already seen him take over this entire backfield at times. He's proven that he can handle a workhorse role. He basically lost his role due to injury and never really recovered from there. He has recovered a little bit of the third down stuff, but he's clearly buried behind Dowdle to really unlock his ultimate ceiling. So weeks 9 to 12, he fell to 5 or fewer carries per game, while Dowdle ripped off a bunch of multi-touchdown outings and then also a 25-touch, 130-yard game in there. So I think that he's probably the distant backup at this moment. So even like in a reduced role, he's still been kind of catching passes. He caught 4 passes for 27 yards in week 12. Most of that were coming on a single drive, but it does kind of give you at least a little bit of an eye for what would happen if Dowdle did go down the stretch. And this team is one that ultimately does want to lean on like a ground heavy attack. He's kind of like the exact one injury away running back that you want in the playoffs to hide on your bench. I think it's just one of these ones. Go check your waiver wire, see if Chuba Hubbard is out there, see if the owner got frustrated and dropped him through the buys. And if he is out there, he'd be one of those ones that I would want to have on any roster just to make sure that you have that covered if Rico does go down. But if your fantasy season isn't going how you hoped, this may help. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, to give you another way to make game day more interesting. Here's exactly how it works. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, passing yards, touchdowns, things like that. Then it's basically you calling how a player performs and seeing your picks come to life on every snap. And here's the part you should know. Right now, new DraftKings customers who play $5 or more get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. So if you're new, you play $5 or more and they drop $50 in Pick 6 credits right into your account. All you need to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use promo code HOLKA to unlock that offer. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Another kind of different situation, right? Devin, Neal, these rookies that end up seeing more touches down the stretch, there is more upside here than people realize. So obviously Kamara went down in week 12 with that knee and ankle issue, will not come back. And now that we have Devin, Neal available in 63% of leagues still is just way too high, right? So Kendre Miller obviously is on the IR. Neal has this entire backfield. So New Orleans has kind of cycled through a bunch of different players through injuries, and really Neal finally gets in the end zone last week for the first time is great, but the playoff schedule is what gives him real upside here. He's the 3rd easiest running back playoff schedule. He gets the Panthers, the Jets, and the Titans. All of them are allowing a top 13 running back fantasy point production on the other side, 6th, 5th most, and then 13th most in the fantasy championship. So we get soft run defenses, and then we get a rookie who's kind of getting some auditioned reps right now for going forward. That's the exact playoff stash profile that you're kind of looking for. He's already flashed the workload. Obviously, these last few weeks been getting more work, but I think he might be the guy that you wish you had if there is a situation where he's still available on your roster. If you're really just in some running back purgatory, he's a guy that can come in and give you meaningful touches right away. A guy you're going to have to wait on though is Blake Corum. He's available in 42% of leagues right now. He already has real double-digit work behind Kyren at times. It's an interesting one because this team has been ahead so much and they've been such a good team around the goal line that the touchdowns have basically just been going to Devontae Adams at this point. But I think even with the usage that's kind of cooled off for this run game around the goal line, it's still one of the best teams in the league, if not the best offense in the league. They're going to have high team totals. They're always going to have a chance to score a ton of points. So I think the exact spike weeks that you're looking for are if Kyren does end up going down. He's obviously briefly left even recently in week 13, and Corum immediately turned 7 carries into a season high 81 rushing yards in that week 13 game. Obviously, he gets the 2-yard score in that game also. So the breakout kind of came right after they had already talked about ramping him up a little bit. And that kind of suggested a little bit that Kyren isn't completely right still from that ankle. So we're keeping an eye on that as we go down the stretch and into the fantasy playoffs. And again, McVay's trust on a legit contender is really just premium handcuff profiling at its best. So I think Corum is still a lot more explosive than people realize. And he's really had some big plays in some of the opportunities that he has gotten. So he's one of those exact playoff handcuffs that you should have rostered behind Kyren if you are a Kyren owner. But at this point, if he's out there, it's one of those opportunities where if Kyren does go down, Blake Corum might be a league winner and is available still in too many leagues. Chris Rodriguez, I got to see this one in person this week as he was here to play the Vikings. 50 rushing yards in that game on a few touches, not a crazy amount of touches, but they are willing to give him a decent amount of work as they kind of grind out things a little bit on the ground, with Jaden Daniels still not completely back to normal, obviously, in his return this past week. Didn't look so good against that Flores defense, but Rodriguez was one that they trusted with a ton of work. They obviously didn't score any points in that game, so the upside is still probably a little bit limited. But the thing that is nice here is the playoff slate is exactly kind of what we're looking for. That's why we're stashing some of these guys. It's not even just for the opportunity that they could gain. It's also for the matchups that they would be walking into in the fantasy playoffs. So this stretch for Washington, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, all teams that rank near the top of the league in fantasy points allowed to the running back position, with New York specifically giving up the second most points per game to the position. So you're kind of stashing these guys as maybe they get a role, or maybe you can kind of put them in and hope that they get a little bit more work in the fantasy playoffs and throughout these next 2 to 3 weeks. I think this is one too where you still want to try and obviously lock in these guys that have goal line appeal. And I think this is one of the ones that I think he's kind of a priority stash. So obviously the Giants this week, you might not get all of the touches in that one, obviously. But if things even skew a little bit different in where things are projected, if you're in a tough spot with injuries, getting a guy in there that has a really strong matchup, that if his usage does shift from like 8 to 10 touches to like 10 to 15 touches, you might be cooking with gas there and you might still be in a better position than you realize. Brian Robinson Jr. So if you are the CMC owner, I think that you would be remiss not to have Brian Robinson Jr. He is available in 78% of leagues right now. So this is a little bit of a different situation because I don't know if he would come in and take all of the work. I don't know if he would get all of the receiving that McCaffrey gets. He's obviously a unique player, but still the amount of carries that he would get in this offense that is highly efficient are still somewhat interesting, right? Because he has the softest playoff schedule if he has to get in there. So the 49ers fantasy playoff schedule is one of the best, 7th easiest for running backs. And I think that Robinson in general could come in and put a big score on the board right away, even if he ends up getting 15 to 20 touches in that one and not all the receiving work that we've been giving to McCaffrey. So the tiny snap share that he has so far, it's easy to forget about these guys. But if you have a guy that's still available in 75% of leagues, again, one injury away from being a huge difference maker down the stretch. Ray Davis. So I guess one of the themes of this video too is looking at some of the elite offenses that are in the playoff, or some of the elite offenses in the NFL, and trying to identify the one injury away player in that offense that you could benefit the most from and still probably is available in your league. So Ray Davis is available in 92.7% of leagues currently. The Bills have already showed the workhorse blueprint with James Cook, right? And James Cook has also been using the passing game a lot more this year, which has been great. So if anything happens to James Cook in the fantasy playoffs, I do think that Ray Davis could be a league winner in the fantasy semis or in the fantasy championship. You get that Bellcow ceiling if Cook ever misses time, and then you get this team that is going to be scoring a ton of points and has strong matchups down the playoff slate as well. Nick Chubb, I struggled with this one a little bit just because he did actually have a rib injury in week 14 against the Chiefs. He did not return. So this is kind of pending if he is healthy, but he is available in 92% of leagues right now. Chubb is someone that obviously his best years are behind him. The playoff schedule is actually really nice. So Houston's running back schedule is the 8th easiest. They get the Cardinals this week, the Raiders, and the Chargers all ranking inside the top 12 in points allowed to fantasy running back. So this is one of these ones where the role behind Woody Marks is probably not one that's going to have enough standalone value, enough juice behind this pretty poor offensive line to get you there this week. But if it is a situation where he ends up being healthy and Woody Marks ends up going down, he's one of those ones that's kind of a boring committee back, but could give you some nice playoff insurance if he is available in your league. Bhayshul Tuten. Again, another guy that is towards the bottom of this list because he did leave last week with a concussion, also fumbled. I'm not sure if it was due to the concussion or not, but he's available still in 70% of leagues right now. Really that goal line hammer on a playoff offense. People don't give the Jags enough credit with how well they have played this year. And I think that he's still one of the game's like best contingency backs, one of the game's I guess he would be the clear lead back if ETN ever did miss some time, but also he kind of just gives you a little bit more of that bigger bodied hammer. And really, even though he's been an afterthought lately, could jump into a pretty defined red zone role right out of the gates if there was ever something that happens on Travis Etienne's plate. So if we get the matchups as well, the week 15 through 17 slate is kind of middle of the pack in terms of running back toughness, but it is one of these guys that has some fresher legs and has some young talent. Again, there's worse bets that you can place in your fantasy playoffs, and just stashing this guy on your bench to wait and see. He might end up being a usable piece in the next 2 weeks.